What's up, everybody? Welcome into Breaking the Huddle. I'm Joel Klatt. This show, as always, is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. It is the one fans deserve. Listen, there's a lot to get into today in college football. And, man, what a wild weekend it was last week in college football with all those great games in the top 10. Really, the only blowouts were up top with those, three great teams that we saw. And then we saw all one-possession games with the rest of the teams in the top 10. So we're going to get into that. I'll share with you my top 10. I've also got a film breakdown of that Michigan offense and more specifically J.J. McCarthy, how J.J. McCarthy needs to improve at quarterback if Michigan's going to go and beat Iowa this week in Iowa City. We're going to talk with Fleck coming up in the program, which is going to be excited because I've been all over Minnesota since the start of the year. And then we'll get to some Klattback at the end of this. But let's start today's program with my top 10, how I see them right now after a few weeks in college football. All right, folks, let's start with number one. And number one, as you will know by now, is going to be Georgia. And really the top three, they can probably be a little bit interchangeable, but they're definitely always going to be in the top three. So I've got them Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama. Okay, now, if we were stopping right there, what would I say about these teams? Well, they've been dominant so far, yes. Georgia, I like what their offense has shown me, in particular Stetson Bennett. Ohio State has the best offense in the country, and I don't think that that's really contentious to say by any means or controversial. They right now are playing as well as anybody that I've seen in the last couple of years. They can run it well. They can throw it well. C.J. Stroud is clearly going to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony if he continues to play this way. And then Ryan Day, the design and the play selection that he has is really second to none. Now, they have not really been challenged. I told you that first week against Notre Dame that it was important the way that they won that game and the style that they won it in, and I still believe that. And now we're starting to see that offense get cranked up. So those are my top three, and they've separated themselves out, certainly. All right, so now as we go 4 through 10, go with Michigan. Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, they were able to survive at times against Maryland and then dominate on the run, in particular with Blake Corum, which was great to see. I've got Clemson at number 5. That's a team that has a great matchup this weekend in North Carolina State. And by the way, Clemson has won 36 games in a row at home. That place is going to be on fire. I think Clemson beats North Carolina State this weekend. Then as we go now 6 through 10, I've got Kentucky all the way up there at number 6. I don't know how good Kentucky is. I'm going to put them up there because I think Mark Stoops has done a really great job. How good are they? I'm not sure. We're going to find out a lot when they play Ole Miss this week. Then as we go now 7 through 10, Oklahoma State, again, another one of these teams I don't know a ton about. I think that they're really good. I like them against Baylor this week. SC at number 8. I've been kind of waffling between, 6 and 8. I put them at 8 this week. They're 4-0, big win over Oregon State last week. Then at 9 and 10, I've got Penn State at number 9. And at number 10, I've got Tennessee after that win over Florida in Neyland Stadium. I like Penn State's run game a lot. But it's not really about all these other teams as much as it is about the top 3. The top 3 have really separated themselves out from college football. Once you get to 4 all the way through 10, I don't want to say they're interchangeable. It's not like I'm going to put Tennessee at number 4. But you clearly have some tiers here. And there's some teams that probably feel like they should be included in the top 10 that I don't have in the top 10. But that being said, what is indisputable right now is these top 3. Why is that? Well, talent. Well, that's pretty clear, yes. But do you know how clear it actually is? The discrepancy between talent, between the top 3 and the rest of college football right now is pretty stark. If you look at those top 3 teams right now in my rankings, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama, you'll find that since the beginning of the playoff era, they've gotten 35% of all 5-star recruits over that time period. So less than 3% of the schools are taking 35% of the top tier talent. That's a remarkable discrepancy. Let me put it to you a different way. In 2021 alone, in that recruiting cycle, those 3 schools got over 50% of the 5-star athletes. So how much better are those 3 schools than everybody else? Well, let's put that into context as well. Did you know that if you look at the composite ranking of the roster and its talent, Alabama has the most talented roster in the country. USC's about 11th right now in terms of talent in the country and where it sits. The difference between Alabama and USC, the gap, the statistical gap in their talent is the same number as the difference between USC and Florida Atlantic, FAU, which is all the way down there at 69, 70. So how do we get a situation where Tulane beats Kansas State on one week and then Kansas State turns around and beats Oklahoma the next? Because you can make a strong argument that Tulane is a lot closer to Oklahoma than even Oklahoma is to a team like Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State. The gap is growing and growing and growing year over year. These top three teams are so much better from a talent perspective than everybody else. That doesn't mean that they won't lose or that you can't beat them. We just saw Michigan beat Ohio State a year ago. It just means that it's low probability. It's low probability. So as we work through the season, these teams are going to continue to win by big margins while everybody else can be susceptible to a loss at any moment. Why is USC in a tough dogfight style game in Corvallis against Oregon State? Because Oregon State is a lot closer in talent to USC than USC is even to Alabama. The gap right now between everybody else is very small, and then from everyone else to the top three is very large. Okay, when we come back, let's dive into Michigan. J.J. McCarthy. What did I see from J.J. McCarthy in his first Big Ten start for the Wolverines? I break it down next and tell you exactly what he needs to do to get better. All right, welcome back to the program. This week's matchup on Big Noon is going to be a great matchup. Michigan against Iowa on the road, as Jim Harbaugh likes to say, where top five teams go to die in Kinnick Stadium. Do you know why those top five teams generally go there to die? Is because they make mistakes. And the guy who makes mistakes that is generally most magnified is the quarterback. Okay, so J.J. McCarthy is going to be under the microscope. And folks, he's going to need to get better quickly from what he showed a week ago. Now, he's got tremendous upside, but he's also playing a style of football that could lend itself to mistakes. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So J.J. McCarthy last week against Maryland in his first Big Ten start, yeah, he did some things well, but he also showed his youth, okay? So he's 18 of 26 for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. Doesn't look bad, right? If you're just looking at the statistics, you think to yourself, well, he did just fine, Joel. The problem is that when you dive into the film, you see that there were massive mistakes lurking based on two things. One, he's got to make quicker decisions in the pocket, and he's got to be ready to throw the ball on time. So his mind has to process information quicker, and his feet have to be ready to throw the football. There were a few instances, like I said, they could have turned into massive mistakes, and thankfully from a Michigan perspective, they didn't. Let's look at the film, and let me show you what I mean. So first of all, this is an inside the red zone snap. So you've got to be touchdown to check down. You've got to see your number one, and if not, that ball's got to come out to the check down. He's got soft coverage. Nothing's coming open right away that could get over that second level. That ball's got to go to the check down immediately. See his feet? They're all this. He's looking at the rush. It doesn't come out to a wide open check down. Now he starts running back in the pocket, and guess what you're going to get? Hit in the face. Bam! Ball comes out. Thankfully for Michigan, they are able to recover it, but guess what? They lost 15 yards, and they end up missing the field goal. So this is a positive offensive drive in the face. He fumbles, and then they miss a field goal. That's a huge mistake. You've got to be touchdown, check down, ready to go. So you've got to make quicker decisions. Touchdown, check down. Be ready to throw the ball on time. Are his feet ready to throw? Let's go to another play because this wasn't the only red zone opportunity that he bungled up a little bit. Again, they're in the red zone here. So he's going to go to his first read. He wants the one-on-one on the top side. He's double covered. He knows it right away, so he's got to come to his check down right away. There's his check down. The ball's got to be thrown immediately. If he doesn't like it, he should run, not double hitch and throw it across the field to a deep route. That's a huge mistake. That ball should have been picked off. It was just out of bounds. That's a big moment in a game, in particular when you play Iowa. Why? Because they master in creating turnovers. When you don't make quick decisions and you aren't ready to throw the ball on time, they will hurt you. All right, not physically. I'm talking about turnovers. Let's take a look at a couple of more opportunities that Michigan had where he wasn't ready to throw the ball. Right here, it's a third down. So you got to know the situation. I've got my tight end running a stop route. I got to just throw it as hard as I can on his chest. If I don't like it, I got to get to my number 2 receiver who's wide open on the wheel route right away. But look, McCarthy, he's dancing in the pocket. He's not ready to throw the ball in time. And what does he do? Forces the ball across the field late into coverage. You cannot make those mistakes in major college football. The growth had better start right away for J.J. McCarthy. We've talked about his high ceiling, but we've also talked about the fact that he's got a lower floor than Cade McNamara. You're seeing it right here. Those mistakes are the low floor. One other instance where he needed to be ready to throw the ball on time to number 2 in the progression. They get the formation that they want. It's a 3-by-1, and this running back is going to run a wheel route. Now, he's got a post down the middle of the field, and he's got the wheel route on the outside, but he predetermines that he wants to throw the post. So he launches the post. But look, the wheel is wide open, even more open when you watch it on the coach's tape. And so he launches the ball almost 60 yards down the field, 55, 60 yards down the field to Andrell Anthony. Well, why is that a bad decision, Joel? Because Andrell Anthony had a step. Yeah, but only when it was 55 yards down the field. It wasn't on time. The quick decisions, be ready to throw the ball on time. Do you know how low percentage it is for a quarterback to throw the ball 55 yards in the air and complete it? It almost never happens. It's like next to zero. It doesn't happen even at the NFL level. Patrick Mahomes, the year they won the Super Bowl over San Francisco, the longest pass that he threw in the air that was completed was actually in the Super Bowl, and it was like 53 yards. That style of pass is not high percentage. So you can't predetermine that you want to throw that post. The ball's got to be thrown earlier, on time, quicker decision to number 2 in the progression, the wide open wheel route. Those are the things that J.J. McCarthy is going to be learning on film this week as he gets ready to go into Iowa City, Kinnick Stadium, and face the Hawkeyes in his first Big Ten road start. If he doesn't grow up and doesn't mature, he'll turn the ball over if he plays like he did last week against Maryland. But if he learns from his mistakes, maybe he'll play a little bit more of an efficient game. Let's go to the Big Ten West when we come back, because one of my favorite teams of the year, folks, and a team that I really think could win their division and wind up in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game is Minnesota. And next, we have the head coach of the Gophers, PJ Fleck, coming right here on Breaking the Huddle live. We talk to PJ Fleck. Hey, welcome back to the program. If you've listened to my podcast or heard me talk anywhere, really, you've heard me talk about one of my favorite teams this year, the Minnesota Gophers. This team is deep, they're veteran, and primed to make a run. I think this is a team that right now is my favorite in the Big Ten West. And right now, I am really pleased to be joined by their head man. PJ Fleck joins Breaking the Huddle now. Coach, what's going on, man? How are you?
Joel, how are you doing, man? Thanks for having us on the show.
Absolutely. Listen, mean every word I said. I know that you guys didn't have the toughest start to your season from a schedule perspective. Tough for me to say, obviously, because you faced Colorado, and that one still is hurting a little bit. But you went into Michigan State last week and housed them. Coach, I mean, you guys playing as good as anybody out there, running the ball well, veteran team. How happy are you with the way that your team has played so far?
Well, I think your key word is so far. You know, that's college football after week 4, week 5, right? Yeah. We've said since January, this has been our most connected football team. They're such a fun team to coach because whatever you put in front of them, they knock down. And a lot of guys that have played a ton of football on this football team have been through an awful lot of adversity, been through a lot of success, been close. We're part of the rebuild. We're part of all of that. So they've seen it in all facets, but they're incredibly connected. They truly love each other. I know it sounds corny when coaches start talking like that, but you really have a special team. How many games you win, I have no idea. But they are so fun to coach because no matter what you put in front of them, they knock down.
You know what's interesting, though, is that connectivity, I think, is more rare now than it used to be. You know, when you and I played college football, even 10 years ago, you know, you could build connectivity almost on an annual basis, you know, through off-season conditioning and so on and so forth. Now, with the transfer portal, it's just more transient. I think it's tougher to have that connectivity, to have that chemistry. You guys seem to have that. How much does it have to do with your veterans? Because you got guys that have been there, like, I don't know. Is Tanner Morgan in his 10th year of college football right now? Those veterans clearly have to have ownership of that locker room to get that connectivity that you're talking about.
Well, we have multiple guys that are now married. We have multiple guys that are engaged.
Exactly.
I mean, love is in
on
the
their
air
fourth
in Minnesota.
degree,
It's
right?
unbelievable. As part of the recruiting process, if you come here, you get to play some ball and find your wife, get married while you still go to school. I mean, throw that in the NIL deals, right?
There you go.
Here's the biggest thing, in my opinion, is when you start to look at football in 2022 is the internal message better be way louder than the external message, because the external message is only getting louder. The ability for social media and outside messages and outside expectations to become louder is more and better than it's ever been, and easy to access, whether that is through the transfer portal and you're getting new players in. To be able to set that standard so high when they walk in here across the board, academically, athletically, socially, spiritually, with a lot of new faces is very difficult to do, meaning the volume of that internal message has to be turned up an awful lot. And as you recruit, not only just to the high school level, but also the portal, you still have to find the right fit, period. Who's going to be able to connect to each other? Who's going to be able to have an open heart to one another? Who's going to be able to really love each other? You're evaluating that constantly. Might be a great player, but still might not be a great fit for the culture. And I think that's being looked at more and more these days.
Culture and chemistry. Well, I've been a part of a lot of teams. You as well, more than I have as a coach and a player. But chemistry is built through wins, to be honest with you. You face adversity, you conquer adversity. That builds chemistry. I just wonder, a game like last week against Michigan State on the road, probably you're thinking to yourself, boy, this is our first real test. Like, how good are we? How far is that going to go, Coach? Because listen, it wasn't particularly close. You guys beat them up and badly, and they only scored in the last minute. And, you're sitting there. That was as impressive a game as I've seen in a long time. How much confidence do you think you can develop off of that win?
Well, I think that confidence comes from your response mechanisms, whether it's good or bad, to have total consistency. I think that's really difficult to do with young people between 17 and now I have to say like 28, 29 years old. We got a 28-year-old punter. So who is a grown man now, right?
That's right.
But they still are kids.
Yes.
And when you're challenging them to be totally consistent in every facet of their life, that's really difficult to do. So it's not just the really hard times that even bring you closer. It's the good times too, but it's got to be consistent of what the culture demands you to have. And, we define culture as simply connecting people. That's all cultures do. So every head coach in America has got a different culture. It's how you connect everybody through times of adversity, times of success, being able to overcome the challenges that are in front of you. Mm-hmm. And once you do that, be ready for the other challenges, because it's not if, it's when. They're coming. I mean, it's just like Game of Thrones. Winter is coming. I mean, challenges are coming. And can you overcome those when they happen consistently, day in, day out? And that's why I say I love this team. They've been able to break boring from day one, which is our challenge to them since January. Day to day has never been the same. Not one day has ever been the same. And can they do it for each other? And if you can do those two things with total consistency and the response that the culture demands, we got a chance. Period. And all you can do is give yourself a chance, because nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah. All right. This will be a short one. You've got one ranked team left on your schedule. Minnesota's biggest challenge to being the Big Ten West champion is?
Staying in the one-game championship season mindset, period. To be 1-0 in this week against Purdue is in our mind, the Big Ten championship. And we have to stay in that type of mindset. And this team has embraced it, done a really good job focusing on it. But again, getting that internal to be way louder than the external with everything else moving around us.
I know I'm not helping, because I'm one of those external voices like, hey, they're going to be 11-1. They're going to be 12-0. Listen, I love watching your team play. I've watched you on tape a couple of times. You guys do it the right way. You're tough. You're physical. You're good at the line of scrimmage. You got veterans in key spots. I've just appreciated the way that you've played football, and I appreciate you joining us today, man. Thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure. Row the boat, Sky Mile. Go Gophers. Thanks, Joel.
There he goes. There you go. Rowing the boat. I said it. You're going to row the boat right down to Indianapolis, right? But one at a time. One at a time, Coach. All right, there he goes. PJ Fleck, head coach of the Minnesota Gophers. Coming up, a little Klattback as we finish things out here on Breaking the Huddle. All right, a little Klattback time. Let's get out to these Twitter streets and take on all the haters, if you will. Man, I sound old. All right, let's get to it. Brian Nelson, at Coach Nelson Bry, says, Joel Klatt, at KU football, they're a feel-good story. That doesn't mean they deserve to be ranked. Totally disagree, guy. Totally disagree. And if you actually dug into the numbers, you would disagree as well. That team should absolutely be ranked. And all you have to do is look at a couple of teams that are ranked ahead of them in the AP poll that don't nearly have the resume that Kansas does. Let me start with Pitt. Pitt was ranked in the preseason. They're getting the benefit of being ranked in the preseason because the AP poll voters are just justifying their preseason opinion by shuffling around pieces and not reevaluating based on what happened in the games. Kansas, better strength of record, better offense, 27 touchdowns overall. They've got a legitimate Heisman contender in Jalen Daniels. Pitt doesn't have any of those. They've lost a game. They beat the same team that Kansas beat, but they beat them at home. They have the 43rd ranked scoring offense. It's not even close. All right, next. Kung Fu Gorilla says, also, water is wet. The West is a complete disaster. A 2-loss team can come out of that side of the conference and make it to Indy. Yeah, but that's not going to happen this year. I think Minnesota is going to be undefeated or maybe 11-1. This is going to be more like 2015 Iowa or 2017 Wisconsin that was in that game undefeated. That's how good I think Minnesota is. So, Kung Fu Gorilla, even though I love your handle, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And please don't fight me because if you're that strong, then I'm fearful. That's going to do it for Breaking the Huddle, folks. I'm Joel Klatt. Tune in on Saturday, Big Noon Saturday at Iowa. Iowa is taking on Michigan. Gus Ginny and I will be there. Thank you for watching. This show, as always, is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. It is the one fans deserve.